You're listening to Crazy Shit in Real Estate. You'll be amazed at all these wild but true situations that others have found themselves in. Because on this show, you'll hear uncensored, unbelievable stories from the world of real estate. I'm Leigh Brown. Let's dive right in. Before you get the rest of the story, I'd love to share a quick message from today's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Follow Up Boss, one of the leading CRMs, client relationship managers for residential real estate. Tons of top producing agents and some of the fastest growing teams out there are using Follow Up Boss to increase lead conversion, eliminate busy work that you're not doing anyway, and frankly, deliver a higher class experience in real estate to everybody who chooses you as their realtor of choice. So if you're going to keep listening to this, which I know you will, there's more information and a personal review of Follow Up Boss. For more information, go to followupboss.com/crazy. Hello, friends. I'm Leigh Brown. This is Crazy Shit in Real Estate, and today is my favorite kind of episode where I get to learn as much or more as you get to learn when you dial into this conversation with Jacob Vanderslice. And yes, it's like the best last name ever. Enjoy this conversation. I'll see you on the other side. Hello, Jacob.
Good day. Good to meet you.
Man, you have the best last name ever. It's way more fun than Brown.
Well, thank you. My wife is a Smith, and after 6 years, she still hasn't changed her last name. So I'm not sure what that means, but yeah.
Smith is higher in alphabetical order, so she wants to be at the top of the list.
Yeah, and much more phonetic. Nobody asks how to spell it, right?
No, but Vanderslice is kind of fun. So maybe you could get her some really good bread sometime and she'll crack.
There you go. I'll see what I can do. What part of the country are you in?
I'm in North Carolina. Where are you located?
We're in Denver.
Oh, very good.
We're in North Carolina.
I'm in Concord, just outside of Charlotte.
Cool. We've got storage deals in Walkertown, Salisbury, Hickory, and Shelby.
So you're right there in the exurbs in my favorite place to sell multifamily too, because I've got something under contract in Hickory and in Salisbury right now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, those are good markets. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I think that's what the COVID era has really expanded for a lot of people is if I only have to go into the office a couple of days a week, I can live in a different ring of the area, which means their stuff has to have somewhere to live too. So
yeah, that's
tell
right.
Our listeners and viewers a little bit about Jacob Vanderslice, where you're located besides Denver and what you do in the real estate space. They can get a little flavor for where we're going today.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for having us on. We're based out of Denver, as you mentioned. I grew up in Arvada, which is a suburb just northwest of Denver. I've been in real estate full time for about 16 years now. We started off doing single family fix and flips, buying at the trustee sales, rentals, did over 1,000 of those over the years, both in Denver and some other markets too. And then we got into commercial real estate back in 13 and 14. We started doing adaptive reuse retail projects, which is basically.
Oh, you're early in that space then.
Yeah, those are some of the more fun projects we've ever done, basically converting 100-year-old warehouse buildings into multi-tenant experience-based retail, did a bunch of breweries and restaurants, yoga studios, coffee concepts. We sold some of those off and hung on to others. And then we got into self-storage in 2015, which has become our main line of business, almost our exclusive line of business. And we started off with ground-up development in Denver in 2015, expanded to the Midwest. We've done conversions from non-storage uses into storage. And the last couple of years, we've been mainly focused on buying existing facilities in a variety of target markets in the Midwest and adding value with management efficiencies.
So when we talk about the storage space, obviously everybody's got a different mental picture of what it looks like. And in the investment world, we kind of know them to be ATM because once you get it set up and operating properly, they are excellent cash flow. But I really want to drill into one thing you talked about where you're taking buildings that weren't formally storage and turning them into storage facilities. Talk to me about that space a little bit, because as the world keeps readapting in a work from home and Zoom era, there's more and more conversation about what could be with existing commercial properties. And I'd love to know what you've experienced and what it looks like.
Yeah, one of the early ones we did was a conversion from multi-story office into self-storage here in downtown Denver. That was an interesting one because of the structure.
Wait. In downtown Denver.
Yeah, in Denver.
So not like out next to the interstate, but in downtown, you took an office.
Just south of downtown. It's in a neighborhood called Capitol Hill. So it's not main downtown, but it's probably 5 minutes down the road from all the high rises, but still very much infill, densely located. We converted that into self-storage from office use, which was an interesting project because of the structural loads. So that was a good one. And then we did another deal in Milwaukee that was converting industrial into self-storage, just kind of underutilized industrial. So repurposing buildings into storage has been an interesting strategy for us and other operators because it's relatively, compared to ground up development, it's relatively low cost and lower risk. You're not building from the ground up. You're not doing a lot of site work. You're just taking the existing footprints and upgrading the HVAC systems and putting in storage units, basically. So that's been good to us. We have not done a retail conversion yet, but that's a common practice, converting big box retail into storage. The main reason we haven't done one is typically zoning doesn't allow for a storage use in a retail project. So you have to go through a long rezone process. But those are fairly common occurrences depending on the submarket.
Okay, so for those of y'all that are not super familiar with commercial real estate, because Jacob, we have a lot of consumer people on the podcast who are just interested in different things. So they don't know all the things we talk about. But when you think about residential real estate, you basically have the property you live in, a house, condo, townhouse. The commercial side is a bunch of wildly different pathways, and industrial and warehouse are far less expensive per square foot than an office building, which is then going to be Class A, Class B, Class C. And then you've got, of course, retail space, you've got hospitality, you've got 1,000 different pathways. So when you mention taking an office building and turning it into storage, you're starting at a higher cost to convert it than moving industrial into storage. And so you mentioned also the load necessary. What in the world did you go through on converting that? Because frankly, this is the first time I've heard of an office building being turned into storage. I mean, on purpose. Obviously, a lot of companies use them for storage for their own purposes, but for any kind of storage, are there limits on the amount of load it can carry, or because it's steel frame in general, it's already stronger? I want to know more about this because the world going forward, I think we're going to see more and more adaptive reuse in a zillion different unexpected directions.
Yeah, especially in office, depending on how long this kind of sticks around for and the shift to work from home, you'll see a lot of office conversions to potentially self-storage, but obviously multifamily too. A lot of folks have done those in the last year and a half. The main expensive line item in our construction budget was structural reinforcement. And it was close to $1 million. And it basically consisted of taking this carbon fiber paper mache and putting it over the load-bearing beams where the beams meet. And that was enough from an engineering perspective to get the floor loads up to a storage level from an office level. So that was interesting. And obviously in industrial, you're not worried about that because it's most of the time it's slab on grade. And typically those buildings are built to withstand a lot more of a floor load than self-storage requires.
Right. They just don't have as many upfits as an office building does. And so if you wind up taking down the level of upfit in that office building, because you don't need the break rooms and the work rooms and all the restrooms for storage that you would need for an office, whereas industrial, as you mentioned, tends to be more of a shell anyway. So it's a little more flexible.
Exactly. Yeah. We turned a lot of those common areas into either the leasing office or storage units.
All right. So when you're talking about storage, who is using the storage? And is it an interior city condo apartment dweller who needs storage for their stuff? Or is it companies that are transitioning right now and figuring out how their workforce is going to be situated going forward? Or who's your customer, Jacob?
It's all the above. Regardless of income, pretty much everybody is a candidate for storage. We have business owners. We have people moving from apartments to homes and homes to apartments, divorce, marriage, upsizing and downsizing their homes. Pretty much everybody is a potential candidate for the asset class. So as far as our customer base goes, it's really market specific. Our customer base in a very densely located infill multi-story facility is different than a suburban property, say in Salisbury, North Carolina. But yeah, business owners, people are moving. Anytime there's a displacement event in the economy, self-storage benefits because people are coming and going more often. And a lot of people just want to convert that third bedroom to an office. They're doing a hybrid work from home, go to the office once in a while, and they don't want to get rid of their stuff. So they'll pay $100 a month for a storage unit, put it in there and get their bedroom freed up.
So then considering when we're recording this, which is November of 21, there is so much unrest in the employment market over OSHA and vaccine mandates and employer mandates. And a lot of people are on edge as to what their personal future is going to look like, in addition to what personal liberty looks like. Do moments like this increase the demand for storage units, or does it decrease as people start to get rid of the excess stuff and figure out how they're going to weather whatever storm it is. I always wonder why people keep the stuff when their lives are in flux.
Well, our average duration of tenancy throughout our portfolio as of today is about 20 months. And I would guess that most of our customers who store with us assume they were going to be there for a lot less than 20 months. In terms of consumer demand, both within our portfolio and within other operators' portfolios, the asset class has seen some really meaningful tailwinds the last year and a half or two. Everyone's seen record occupancy growth, record revenue growth. And the big question in our minds is, how long does this stick around for? Is this a systemic long-term shift to storage consumer demand, or is it kind of a blip on the radar and then it kind of falls back to a normal usage level? Time will tell. So we're being cautious in the deals we select for acquisitions. But so far, it feels like the demand is staying very strong and actually increasing quarter to quarter.
Okay, so I ask you an oddball question here. One of my favorite TV shows is Storage Wars. I will admit it. I love watching that show. I know it's unrealistic, and I know I can't go to an auction and see that stuff. And you mentioned that people are staying in their unit. Your average consumer or business tenant is 20 months, which I'm going to guess is longer than they anticipated. How frequently do you see somebody that forgets it's in there and has it on autopilot, and then it goes to auction because they stopped paying the credit card balances, they've changed addresses? How much of that weirdness is in your space?
It happens pretty frequently, and it especially happens on new acquisitions. So we'll buy deals that are not operated very efficiently. So we'll inherit a lot of legacy delinquency that we're kind of working through in the first couple quarters of ownership. So we'll run auctions a lot more frequently on deals like that. Properties we've owned for a couple of years, the delinquency rate's a lot lower, but it's a very common occurrence. People just kind of forget about their stuff. They change their bank account, they change their credit card number, whatever it might be. The phone number you have on file for them doesn't go anywhere. You can't get to them. And eventually you have to auction their contents. But yeah, I'm familiar with Storage Wars too. We haven't had them on any of our sites before, but I would guess the stuff they auction is probably maybe not in those units, actually, in some cases. Maybe they put it in there to make a better TV show.
Oh, Jacob, you're breaking my heart here.
That's all right. It's still, just assume that it was always there. Just assume it's all real. Yeah. You wouldn't guess reality TV would kind of fake it, but I hear something they do. Yeah.
So real. Well, so that leads me to another angle, because we know that nationally there is a residential housing shortage, and that's on the apartment side as well as on the residential side. And all of us that are regular realtors, we hear anecdotes about people turning a storage unit into somewhere they're going to live. And obviously that's against the terms of use and the conditions that people sign on that 4-page waiver. How often do you find people using storage as residents? And is this something that you think might become an adaptive reuse of a storage facility in the future?
It's possible that it would make sense to convert storage to multifamily down the road. But for right now, our customers that do decide to sleep in there overnight are, of course, breaking the rules. It's a pretty common occurrence we see. It's especially a problem in our really densely located infill locations. It's not so much of a problem in the suburban locations. But Denver specifically, we have a major homeless issue. And the government thinks that issue is because of affordable housing. And I believe it's more of a mental health and addiction issue, more so than it is an affordable housing issue. But without going too deep into politics, we'll have folks sleep in units. They'll come in right before the facility closes. They'll close the door and they'll set up their mattress. We had a guy deliver a pizza once to his unit, which was a first for us. But that's definitely a common occurrence. They're not supposed to sleep in there, but occasionally will become residential operators for a night or two versus just self-storage operators.
Well, I'm glad you said that out loud. And for all the people in the back, there's a real truth in this. And I don't think it is a service to our neighbors as humans when we don't treat the underlying mental issues. We act like everything can be solved with stuff, but that's a different discussion altogether, Jacob. But I don't mind going down a political route because that's who I am, obviously. But anyway, let's go back to storage and let's talk about numbers. So when you got into this space, obviously you were operating in other sides of real estate where you were making a good profit. What drew you to storage? Was it getting rid of tenants and not dealing with the general public as much? Or was it the 20-month timeframes? What drew you to this space?
Well, one of the main mistakes we've made in our real estate careers is being overly transactional, meaning buying, making better, and selling too often and too quickly. And you can build up cash and wealth doing that, but it's very tax inefficient. And every time you sell a deal, you pay taxes and you have to find a new one to deploy your capital into. So we like self-storage primarily as a cash flow vehicle, and our strategy is more of a longer-term hold with capital appreciation, but cash flow along the way. And we also like its historic resistance to recession. So in the financial crisis of 2008, which you went through, you probably remember like it was yesterday, and so was I. I was a real estate operator during those years. They were tough years, of course, for everybody. The self-storage performed very well compared to other real estate asset classes. It had one of the lowest mortgage default rates, and it still had positive NOI growth during that crisis. And fast forward to COVID, kind of the same thing. So we wanted to strategically enter an asset class that does well in upswings, but also is defensible against downturns. That's why we got into it. So in terms of the operations side, it's kind of a common misconception that operating self-storage is kind of a fire and forget strategy. That could not be further from the truth. We are a operational business before we are a real estate business, and we're a self-storage operator to a degree before we're a real estate investment company. And the operations are critical. Like I mentioned earlier, you've got homeless issues. In addition to that, you have theft issues, you have criminal activity, you have people breaking into other customers' units, you have gate systems going down, all the typical repair and maintenance and customer issue fire drills that you have in multifamily or anything else. The only difference between storage and multifamily is you have to go through the courts to get a customer out if they're not paying. So that's helpful on the ownership side, but we certainly still do deal with our fair share of fire drills.
So basically, this is more predictable, more stable kind of a real estate investment. Obviously, nothing's guaranteed in life, but you've got some built-in stability, whereas you just don't have that. I like what you didn't say flipping. You said make it better when you buy a property that needs to be made better. That was a very nice thing to say. And for the record, the people breaking into their neighbors' units is not always on purpose, because I spent a solid hour trying to get into the unit next to mine, and I couldn't get into the lock, and I thought the lock was messed up, and I was this close to getting my bolt cutters. And then I went to the office, and the nice lady in there told me I was getting in the wrong unit. So that wasn't theft. That was me completely being convinced that I was getting into the right unit, and I was right next to my unit, but that's okay because I did not actually break through their lock. So
well, that's good. That's good.
Malicious. I'm just going to point that out. Some of us are just forgetful.
Yeah. You mentioned predictability earlier, and that's to a degree true. I'll talk about kind of some of the good and the bad elements of the industry. So one of the good parts of it that we really like is the granularity of the revenue stream. So that means we're relying on thousands of people to pay us $50 to $300 a month. And the chances that a big chunk of them are going to roll over at the same time is very low. And we also like the dynamic revenue management aspect. So all the leases are month to month, which means that let's say you have a unit type that's in really high demand, you can increase rates on that incrementally $5 or $10 a month with a 30-day notice, and you amortize that across 1,000 units and put a cap rate on it. That's a lot of value increase. And then likewise, if you have a unit type that's lower on occupancy, you can drop rates below market to drive occupancy up, and then eventually increase rates when you get to critical mass. Now, the benefits of it are those, but the challenges of it in terms of forecasting is all these leases are month to month, and you're forecasting out revenue streams month to month, 10 years into the future. So there's a lot of assumptions that go into the seasonality aspect, the unit mix type. A 10 by 10 will command a certain price per square foot versus like a 5 by 5. Even a 10 by 10 by the front door of the facility will command a premium versus like a 10 by 10 in the back of the building. So we look at every one of our units as their own individual product type with their own individual revenue stream. Then forecasting that out can be challenging. With that being said, though, if something is not going according to plan, you can course correct quickly because all the leases are month to month and kind of get back to where you want to be.
Okay. So I told y'all that I would do a review of Follow Up Boss, because I'm your friend in real estate, and I did. Now, there's a blue million CRM out there. I mean, if you go to any Facebook group, every realtor's like, which one should I use? Which one should I use? And you know that these CRM, which are client relationship managers or customer relationship manager, whatever you want to call it, it's truly a system that's just designed to help you know what to do next, because you're very busy and you're a multitasker in real estate. And with all those different tasks and balls up in the air, you need something to help you stay on track. And that's what Follow Up Boss does. Now, when you save a name and a phone number in there, that is basically a Rolodex. Follow Up Boss is going to take the names and phone numbers and also help you know what to do next. So you can maintain these relationships with your neighbors, because that's what this is about. Real estate is not about serving just prospects and clients. It's about taking great care of your neighbors' needs in real estate. And if you'll use a tool like Follow Up Boss, Will they remember you? Oh, they might even call you when they're ready to buy or sell again, or when their mom and daddy do, or their best friend or their kid, and you want to be top of mind. That's what a product like Follow Up Boss will do for you. Truly, it's going to change your business when you start paying better attention to people. They don't have to know you used Follow Up Boss, but they'll totally understand that they are being heard by you. So now there's a free trial for my people because you're loved. Go to followupboss.com/crazy. No credit card is required. And frankly, because you're my people and we made an ask for you, Follow Up Boss said, yes, you get double the free trial. That's actually enough time to log in, put some pieces in it, and watch it change your business as it has for so many realtors and teams nationwide. Again, go to followupboss.com/crazy to start your free trial today. I had no idea that it would be a premium to be at the front of the complex because my units are at the back because I want to be as far away from other people as possible. But I guess that means I'm also getting a better deal because I'm a weirdo. So that's a perk.
Yeah, different taste too. I mean, like in a multi-story building, the units on the ground floor that don't require a ride on an elevator will command a premium over the units that are maybe 5 stories up. You have to get on an elevator. You have to wait to go up. You have to push your cart 100 feet. So yeah, each individual unit has its own revenue stream based on where it's located.
I love this because so often when we're looking at data, we look at big data and we talk about big data and you talk about the metadata and we forget that the best way to maximize is down in those seriously granular moments. So out of curiosity, how does somebody get involved in this space? Because if you have to buy a whole self-storage unit facility, you're talking big bucks. Is there syndication available in this self-storage space? Do you take on investors? How does somebody get started when they're listening to this thinking, man, I would like some regularity to my income. I like the operations side way better than the emotional tenant stories. What's the starting block, Jacob?
Well, there's 2 options. You can go out and buy your own deal and operate it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Typically, if you're doing one property, you need to intend to do more in that same submarket to kind of spread some of those fixed costs across a larger asset base. You have to find a property that makes sense. You have to find a good manager to oversee it. You have to pick up the phone when a customer calls, but it's your deal and you don't have any partners. So your destiny is just yours and anything you create in the deal is 100% yours. Alternatively, there are syndications and funds out there like ours where you can invest passively. And the most work you do is filling out subscription documents and having a couple Zoom calls, and then you get distributions and upside and tax advantages. We do funds and syndications. We've been mainly doing funds the last couple of years. And for folks who aren't maybe up to speed on both of those, a syndication is typically a single asset LLC that a sponsor will go out and buy one deal, make distributions to investors, but it owns one property. And a fund is identical to a syndication, but a fund is a collection of assets. So inevitably, say a fund has 10 properties, 2 properties might be behind forecast or performing less than expected. 6 might be performing exactly as expected, and 2 might be ahead. And they all kind of balance each other out. And if eventually there's a dog in the portfolio, one of the 10, the other 9 kind of prop that one up. So we like the fund strategy for kind of the cash flow and geographic diversification. We're on our most recent fund now. We're recording this again in November. We're closing this fund in December of this year. We will have deployed about $40 million in equity and about $100 million in total cost across 14 properties in the Midwest and Southeast. And we're launching Fund 3 in January of 2022. That's going to be a similar strategy, acquiring existing facilities and adding value through operations. And then we're also getting back into development. We haven't developed for a while. We're going to start doing some single asset development syndications middle to late 2022, which is a totally different risk profile and return profile. But inherently, if you're building new product in high barrier to entry markets that are tough to get entitled, hard costs are through the roof, labor's tough, those will eventually command a premium to a larger buyer 5 years down the road. So
you mean like everywhere with the labor shortage and the supply?
Oh yeah, no, it's systemic. It's not just a Denver thing. I mean, there's some markets that are a little bit easier to operate in, but everyone's at the mercy of the supply chain. I read the other day that a company used to spend $1,500 to ship a container of goods over from China. And now that same company is spending $15,000.
Well, maybe we should bring manufacturing back stateside, but that's Leigh Brown's opinion.
That's a crazy idea. Huh?
I'll pay more for USA made things. I don't know about you, but like if I'm at a shop, if it says made in USA, I'm more likely to carry it to the register than if it says made in China. And I even went off on the store I bought my flags in the other day because they had a whole bunch that were made in China. That's just a travesty. But anyway, so back to My question about development, are you building storage units in opportunity zones? Is this a good play for what you're doing? Are you in that particular tax space?
We are not targeting opportunity zones by themselves. If we find a deal in an OZ, we'll certainly kind of add that on to the deal's attraction to investing, but we're not targeting opportunity zones specifically. Most of the development deals that we're targeting are, as I mentioned earlier, in very high barrier entry locations like Central Denver, Pacific Northwest. Okay. We're looking at a deal tomorrow in Austin, Texas. Deals that are tougher to get entitled, tougher for just anybody to show up and build something. So those are the areas we're looking at. If they happen to be in an OZ, that's kind of the icing on the cake, but we haven't done one yet in an opportunity zone.
And for the record, those of y'all that are watching or listening, not super familiar with opportunity zones, they're an amazing tax strategy that was championed by Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina to drive capital investment into census tracts that have pretty much just been neglected when it comes to capital being attracted in. So if you have an investment in an opportunity zone, if you hold it for 10 years, then you do not have to pay taxes on your capital gains, which is also incentive to stay put and let an area go through its revitalization process, which is why I'm asking, because we're always curious about tax strategies. And so my second tax question I have to ask Jacob is, if I'm selling one of my investments, can I 1031 my proceeds into self-storage? Does that count as like kind since it's real estate, or is yours going to count on the tax side more as operational?
So you could 1031 into self-storage. You regrettably could not 1031 into one of our funds or syndications because of a tenancy in common issue. Funds and syndications typically have a hard time accepting 1031 capital because of the tick issues that creates, which is basically you have to memorialize on the deed that a limited partner investor has a certain slice of the property, and just administratively and tax-wise, that's complicated. But 1031s are a great vehicle. We've got a few exchanges ourselves, and it's been a great way to just defer liability indefinitely. And eventually, if you do enough of them, you get in a position where you cannot sell without exchanging, because your basis keeps going down and down and down. We have a retail property in Denver. It's probably worth, $8 million, or it used to, at least it was before COVID. And if we sold that property today and did not 1031, our cash proceeds, not our profit, but our cash proceeds would not be enough to pay the tax bill. So you really get into this kind of basis reduction game, and the basis goes down eventually so far where you're stuck. If you want to get to your cash, you'd have to refinance, or you have to sell and do another exchange.
It's definitely the reason you always have a tax professional or a tax attorney in your corner before you pull the trigger on any deal like that, and make sure you know exactly what you're getting into.
And you want a tax strategist, not a tax processor. There's a big difference. Yeah. Many of them are processors. Very few of them are strategists.
If they don't know real estate well, then that's not who you call for this stuff, because a tax pro who knows how to do your W-2 is not necessarily the same one who will understand these kind of strategies. And not that one's better than the other, they're just two different specialties altogether, and you should know that. So obviously gone down a couple of rabbit holes here because I'm excited to learn about the space that you're in. But of course, the show is crazy shit in real estate, and my viewers and listeners are sitting back there thinking, he's got to have seen something, and I baited you twice and you didn't fall for it. So I'm really curious, Jacob, as to what you've seen in real estate that is a story you would tell over cocktails to somebody that would never, ever in a million zillion years believe that you saw it, experienced it, did it, heard it. What was that story?
Well, we've got so many of them. I'll try to kind of pick the top ones. To start, we had a customer who was a criminal in one of our storage facilities, and it happens to be in the storage facility that we office in. So we have a building that we own in Denver, and we office upstairs, and we have self-storage on the main floor. And this guy had stolen a U-Haul vehicle, taken all the U-Haul decals off, and replaced the plates with some stolen license plates. And he had drugs and guns and whatever paraphernalia in his storage unit. And of course, he wasn't paying. And we did some research on him and found out he had all kinds of warrants out. The cops wanted to know who this guy was. So we called the cops up and said, listen, we got this guy in one of our units. Do you want to kind of help us get him out of here? And they're like, wow, that guy's a big deal. He's a big problem. So they said, call us up the next time you see him coming and going. So a couple of days went by, and we see him show up in his stripped U-Haul vehicle and park in our parking lot. So we call the police and we say, hey, our guy's here. You guys can come over? Like, yeah, we'll come over. So 4 cars show up and they stage on our street. And he's in there kind of doing some stuff in his truck. And they're talking, they're kind of pre-gaming before they come in. He doesn't know that they're there yet. And we're like a bunch of Garfield characters glued to the window upstairs, getting ready to watch this go down. Yeah, nobody got any work done for like 2 hours this day. So eventually the cops come in, guns drawn, 4 or 5 of them. And this guy's in the parking lot and he sees him come in and he reaches in his pocket. And we're thinking, this is not going to go well. Do not put your hand in your pocket when you're at gunpoint. And he reaches in his pocket and pulls out a meth pipe and throws it over the fence, thinking cops aren't going to notice you threw your meth pipe over the fence. But what we were terrified of is, you reach in your pocket, you might get shot. And thankfully he didn't. So we watched them take this guy down at gunpoint, put the plastic handcuffs on him and haul him back into their squad car. So that was an interesting experience watching that go down from the office window. And I mentioned earlier, we had a guy order a pizza. Pizza guy shows up. He's like, unit, 110, is this an apartment building? And this guy walks out at the loading dock and says, oh, it's for me. And he's just kind of hanging out in his unit. But lots of stuff like that in the storage world. And in our single family days, we saw all kinds of crazy things. Meth labs. We've remediated probably 4 or 5 meth labs over the years, buying properties at auctions, dealing with lien issues, trying to get possession of something. You're not sure if somebody lives there. Yeah, we've been in the trenches for a while and we've seen a lot of stuff go down. If something else pops in my head before we get off the Zoom call here, I'll be sure to let you know.
So I got to ask, the drug guy who thought he could get out of trouble by tossing his meth pipe out of the van, Jacob, if he had paid for his unit, would he have even been on your radar? So could he have been a more responsible criminal and avoided detection? This is just me watching too much NCIS.
He may not have been on our radar.
He was on their radar.
Yeah. We started seeing a lot of unsavory folks coming and going with him. We have security cameras. We're recording everything. And when you start to see kind of questionable activity, you start to ask questions and kind of look into it further. But I don't want to say that he would have evaded detection in perpetuity, but he certainly would have bought himself a little more time had he actually been paying his $80 a month for a storage unit.
Oh, see, crime looks like lots and lots of different things. And sometimes it's the not paying of the bills. It is the tripwire. And so we're glad for that.
Yeah, we got him out of there, thankfully.
I mean, the other tenants are probably glad too. They probably didn't want to have the drug and gun runner in there because that's not really a great neighbor.
Storage is kind of a commodity. The basics of storage, you want your facility to be clean, safe, and secure. That's all you need. And if people don't feel safe and secure when they're storing, you're going to have issues. And
you want it to have good hand trucks at every door. That's a very important thing to have.
Yep. Good hand trucks. Make sure the doors operate efficiently. If it's a climate controlled building, you don't want it to be 30 degrees in the winter and 90 in the summer. It actually has to be really climate controlled versus just saying it is. So yeah, all that stuff's important to our customer base.
And we don't like mouse poop either, just for the record. When we see mouse poop, that doesn't feel good. So yeah.
Yep. Rodents are bad news. Roaches, you don't want that either. Yeah.
I mean, they're going to be your neighbors, but just not as many of them as you would see on that old MTV show, Joe's Apartment, which you're too young to remember it. But that was hilarious. Did you ever see the reruns of that?
I don't think so. No.
It was a little short thing that ran on MTV back when they showed music videos. And now I'm totally showing my age, but the roaches would help him get ready for his dates. And so he would cut the lights on, they would scatter, but it was all I can think about whenever anybody says roaches. But regardless, Jacob, if somebody wants to learn about the programs that you have, they want to get some more information on storage units, syndications, getting involved in your funds, what's the best way for them to find information and contact your crowd?
Well, we always love talking real estate with anybody. You can go to our website, which is vanwestpartners.com, or you can hit me on LinkedIn, and that's Jacob Vanderslice.
All right, friends, all of Jacob's links are in the show notes for this episode because you like Vanderslice too. And now you're sad that's not the website, but never fear, all the links are there. So you can go connect up and learn some more about a different angle of real estate that might be a good place for you to invest your own self in the future. Jacob, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I hope that one day you can convince your wife to take on a fun last name. But if not, then, Smith is a hard one to let go of. I don't blame her.
Yep. 6 years in, I'll keep working on it. Maybe by year 10, we'll be good to go.
I mean, you never know. It depends on the size of the jewelry, probably. Just saying, women are kind of easy to convince when there's stuff involved. But anyway,
good advice.
Appreciate your information and thank you for coming on the show, guys. Make sure that you leave him a nice comment. Make sure you leave me 5 stars. And after you go contact and learn some things, let us know what you figured out about self-storage for yourself. And make sure you tune back in. We'll see you next time on Crazy Shit in Real Estate. Okay, now don't forget to go try Follow Up Boss so that your business can continue to expand in professionalism, and then you can meet some more crazy people yourself. I really appreciate Follow Up Boss sponsoring this episode, but mainly I appreciate them for giving y'all double the free trial time with no credit card required. So make sure you go to followupboss.com/crazy and then let me know what you think. I'll see you guys next time.
As always, I'm so super thrilled that you joined in for more crazy shit. And if you're a realtor, investor, inspector, lender, or just a regular human being who happens to have an unbelievable story that you need to tell the world about, or frankly, you just need to one-up the story you just heard, then make sure to DM me on Instagram at Leigh Thomas Brown, or tweet me at Leigh Brown, or frankly, any social network where you hang out. I'm there. And if you had some fun, then you totally want to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes.